Hello and welcome to the Gameplay Cast's review of the 2D action-adventure RPG Moonlighter. Now if you've ever wanted to run a shop fueled by the loot you've plundered, then this could be the exact game for you. Moonlighter is an action-adventure RPG, as I said previously, with charming 2D visuals harping back to that glorious 16-bit era. It mixes the mechanics of a classic dungeon delver with that of running a shop. An interesting concept, well presented, and perhaps most importantly, enjoyable. So the big question, is it worth your hard-earned money and precious time? In this man's opinion, it definitely is. Keep watching to find out why. In any case, its cost on Steam is fairly reasonable and is currently included with Xbox Game Pass and PlayStation Plus Premium and Extra. So you've not really got anything to lose. The player takes charge of Will, a would-be hero and shop owner who is obsessed with exploring the dungeons behind each of the strange gates on the outskirts of his village, Renoka. To make a living, he needs to obtain rare artifacts and loot from the dungeons to sell in his family's shop. This in turn allows him to upgrade not only his equipment, but his shop and also the local village facilities. Will's story is pretty basic. His parents died as a result of adventuring in the dungeons. His father went missing in the aforementioned dungeons. Consequently, his mother gradually faded away through a broken heart. Tragic. This left the old man Zenon as Will's steward and guide. As I said, the story is fairly basic, but games like this are about their depth of gameplay, and I think it's fair to say that this game has it. The dungeons are roguelite in design, so if you die in the dungeon, you lose most, if not all, the items that you collected. They are also procedurally generated, so will be different each time you enter. At the end of each dungeon is a boss, the slaying of which rewards the player with some cool items, the unlocking of the next dungeon, and probably a lecture from Old Man Zenon. Don't worry too much about the roguelite mechanics though, as it's not as unforgiving as most, and there are items that you can pick up along the way that will ease your burden considerably. By night you loot dungeons, but by day as a merchant in Renoka, you run your shop. Running the shop successfully can take a fair bit of trial and error. For each item you wish to sell, you must experiment with the price point. Too low and customers will snap up the bargain, much to the detriment of your coin purse. Too high, however, and customers will turn their noses up, making you no money at all. The combination of these two core mechanics is an intriguing mix, and not something I've personally seen before. All this, and I haven't even mentioned the RPG and customization in the game, which I'm happy to report is plentiful. There are a ton of weapons and armor combinations, each altering how your character performs in combat. Heavy armor gives you more armor and health, but makes you move slower, whereas light armor offers the vice versa. Certain weapons are range weapons, while others have more effective blocking, etc, etc, the list goes on. In total, there are 4 armor types, each with 4 variants, and there are 5 weapon types, each with 9 variants, not including options contained in the DLC, which is not part of the review. Both armor and weapons can also be enchanted to increase their power and effectiveness. Alternative specials and secondary effects can also be applied to weapons depending on the player's choice. Upgrades are not just limited to your equipment either. For a price, the size and quality of your shop can be increased, as too can the other merchants and facilities in Renoka, gradually restoring the village to its former glory. Yay! Crafting is mostly done at the blacksmiths, where you can unlock more crafting recipes with each upgrade. This then requires you to balance what you hold for crafting with what you decide to sell in your shop. Happily, the handy wishlist function allows you to mark crafting targets so you can easily identify items you need. Even though the combat in this game is clearly Zelda inspired, the weapon and armor combinations really allow the player to express themselves and create a fighting style that matches their preferred playstyle. This is a great touch and really makes the game's combat stand out. All of this adds up to a game that will keep you in the cycle of just one more run for hours on end. As a 2D game, resolutions and frame rates are not really on the agenda. I can say I 100% completed this game on an Xbox Series X and didn't experience any visual or performance issues. Earlier I described the visuals as charming, and I think that's the best word for them. I love the retro feel and style of this game. The developer Digital Sun's attention to detail is fantastic. Now you may be thinking, it's a 2D game man, but really, the game is full of little touches and polish that really show how much the developer cared. The feel of each dungeon is different and unique, as are the enemies within. I mean, even the main menu animation is cool. What of the sound, you say? Well, the soundtrack is on point, and while not hugely memorable, it's thematic, and for this style of game it does a good job of not being super irritating after the long periods of repetition that go with this type of roguelite combat. There isn't any voice acting, which is a shame, but that's not really very common in this type of game. Anyway.
Like the video, you shall? Yes.
let's get straight into the main problem I have with this game, and that's got to be the repetitive and fixed nature of the dungeons combined with the linear correlation to the game's equipment and upgrades. What I mean here is that each tier of equipment is calibrated to a particular dungeon, and in order to realistically progress through that dungeon and its boss, you generally need to have obtained the top tier of armor and weaponry from that dungeon. Compounding this, the right amount of farmed material from within that dungeon is also required. So what I'm saying is you have to grind through each dungeon enough times to get your equipment upgraded before going on to the next dungeon, otherwise the game will feel unnecessarily challenging. Equally, the procedurally generated nature of the dungeons can make getting one of a particular item frustrating. And when you go back on yourself, when you have new equipment, the older dungeons are ridiculously easy. I do also have a slight issue with the price points too. What starts off as fun and interesting soon becomes kinda boring and frustrating. I need the money to buy my next upgrade so I can move the game on, but I keep selling stuff at stupidly low prices, or not at all. Plus, there's so many items in the game which makes looking each one up to check the price in the log rather tedious. By the last few dungeons, I basically just gave up and went online to find the ideal price points for a lot of items. Yeah, cheater, I know, the shame. Inventory management can also be painful. I understand that the game both helps and hinders here, and the whole purpose is to fill your pack with the rarest items possible and get back to your shop in one piece, and that means you can't bring everything, so you have to choose wisely. And that's cool, and I'm not even complaining about the curse mechanic that results in certain things happening within your inventory when you exit a dungeon either. I quite like the extra dimension this adds to inventory management. I just found the amount of button presses needed to sort the items and move them around between containers to get the right amounts back into my pack rather tedious after a while. My last gripe is that the shop assistant is utterly useless. It would have been much more useful if you could tell her what to do instead of her wandering around aimlessly, maybe stopping a thief, but most of the time just letting you do everything. And while I'm at it, damn that stupid bird as well. Overall though, the contrast between the fast and furious roguelite dungeons and the slower pace of being a merchant at running your own shop balance perfectly, creating a cycle of farming and selling that is surprisingly satisfying despite the element of grind that inevitably creeps in. Layer that with the town and equipment upgrades allowing you to expand and personalise your shop and fighting style, sprinkle in a layer of mystery as you try to uncover what the purpose of the gates and the dungeons beyond are, and you have a game that is fun, challenging, and will keep you hooked for hours. I 100% completed this game in around 10 to 15 hours, and bar a few frustrating moments, I really enjoyed my time with it. I therefore award this game a very solid 8 out of 10. The grind created by the game's linear progression only slightly mars this unique mix of merchant and roguelite. Moreover, it looks great and keeps you coming back for more. A game worthy of investigation, folks. I've been Tim from Gameplay Casts, you've been awesome, and all that's left for me to say is peace out guys, and thanks for watching.